is a very simple principle. It says, you can't give away what you don't have. Now, it sounds ridiculous, okay? But it's more than what meets the ear as you hear this. You can't give away what you don't have. People who are not good at giving away love can't give away love because they don't have it to give away. If I want to give you a dozen oranges, I can't give you those dozen oranges unless I go out and pick up 12 oranges someplace. Otherwise, all it is just empty rhetoric. And the same thing is true of virtually everything in your life. You can't give away love for others if you don't have love in here to give away. If what you have in here is contempt, if what you have in here is anger, if what you have in here is fear, then these are the things you're going to be giving away in your life. And I've often thought, and I really believe very strongly that there's a law, sort of a law in the universe. I call it the law of attraction. And the law of attraction is one that works like this. You get back from the universe, from the world, what it is that you put out there in the world. And if you're putting out there into the world that I am not worthy of attracting something beautiful into my life, that the universe will respond back to you with exactly that message. And there are people who come to me and who came to me for years when I had my own counseling practice and so on, and they would say to me, I just keep attracting the same kind of people, the same kind of events, the same kind of losers into my life. Why is that? Why do I keep doing that? And I keep attracting an absence of abundance. I just can't seem to attract abundance into my life. I'm always behind the 8 ball. I'm never getting ahead. And I suggested to them, I said, did it ever occur to you that that's the very kind of message you're sending out to the world and out to the universe? That the ocean of abundance is there. And you can go to that ocean of abundance and you can take a Mack truck and you can fill it up 20 times a day and take it out of there, and guess what? It doesn't impact at all the ocean of abundance. It doesn't even go down a zillionth of an inch. It's unlimited. Or you can go to the same ocean of abundance with a eyedropper, and you can just take this much out once a month and say, that's all that seems to be available for me. And the interesting thing for me is that when people go to this ocean of abundance, this unlimited world, all that I have is thine, it says in the holy books. All that I have is thine. It's all there for you. But if you believe inside that it's limited, that you can only get so much, that other people are going to get it before you do, then you'll find yourself creating that very same thing. And the even more interesting part about this you can't give away what you don't have principle is that if your message to the universe is gimme, 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 which is a lot of people's message to the universe. I want this from you, I want that from you, please give me this, I have to have that. That's what their prayer is like, that's what their message is, you know, and they say, I want this from the universe, gimme, gimme, gimme. The universe's response back to that kind of a mentality is exactly the same. The universe will say right back to you over and over again, gimme, gimme, gimme. And you'll find yourself never ever arriving, but always being in a state of striving, always feeling as if you're being neglected, never feeling as if you have enough, always feeling as if you're being shortchanged, because you're constantly under the pressure to give, to get back what the universe is demanding from you. And the interesting thing about all of this, the irony of this, is that if you shift that and you say to the universe, to the world, how may I serve? How may I serve? The universe's response back to you is, how may I serve you? How may I serve you? And it's very intriguing. When you take your energy and your attention off of what you are demanding from the world, and instead saying, what can I give to the world? And it's really the basis behind that very famous line of the President John Kennedy's inaugural address. Ask not what your country can do. Ask what you can do for your country. And the irony of that is, and I've learned that in my own life, that when I stopped thinking about what was in it for Wayne Dyer and how much could I get, and I began to shift and say, how can I help you? How can I give to you? What can I do for you? And people who write to me, I send them something. When I encounter somebody that needs help of some kind, I'm very often just giving that to them. And then I find that it just keeps coming back into my life. And once I shifted that energy off of what can I have into what can I give, it seemed to me that the universe responded back with the very same message. What can I give to you? And the most incredible and wonderful and beautiful abundance has flowed into my life in every way that I can possibly think of. You can't give away what you don't have. So take a look at an inventory of what you do have. How much do you love yourself? How much kindness do you have in you? How much peace do you have in you? How much joy do you have in you? And if you're able to give that away as many times as you can in a given day, watch and see how much more of that continues to show up and come back in your life. Okay? The third principle is one of my very favorites. It's called, there are no justified resentments. And this is a very difficult principle for many people to get, but one that I believe very strongly in. I was in a group one time of drug addicts and alcoholics. And I was one of the people that was a sponsor and leading this group. And the sign on the wall said, there are no justified resentments in this group. And what I said to that group that night was, no matter what anybody says to you here, no matter what kind of anger comes directed towards you, no matter how much hate you may encounter showing up in your life, there are no justified resentments. Meaning that if you carry around resentment inside of you about anything or about anyone, and I'm talking about the person that you lent money to and hasn't paid you back, I'm talking about the person in your life that you feel was abusive in your life, I'm talking about the person who walked out on you and left you for somebody else, I'm talking about all of the things that you have justified in your heart and in your life that you have the right to be resentful about. And I'm suggesting to you that those resentments will always end up harming you and creating in you a sense of despair. I've often said that no one ever dies from a snake bite. The snake bite will never kill you. You cannot be unbitten. Once you're bitten, you're bitten. But it's the venom that continues to pour through your system after the bite that will end up destroying you. So now you have to take a look at all of the resentments that you may have in your life. And I'd like to suggest to you that I think there is a wonderful metaphor for this that I have created in my life for how to make this work. And I think that Regis Philbin is the one who's responsible for it, all right? My buddy Regis. There's a show called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire that has been popular all over the world. I'm in South Africa, it comes on, all right? I was in Australia, and they've got their own Australian version. And in Greece, they have the Greek edition of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And basically, this show has two levels that you have to get to. Now, the first level is the $1,000 level. And at the $1,000 level, you basically have to answer a question like, on your hand, you have some digits. Those digits on your hand are called your feet, your nose, your ears, your fingers. And everybody who ever goes on the show has this horrible dread that they're going to go out on one of those questions, right? So basically, in order to get to the $1,000 level, all you have to do is answer 5 pretty simple questions in order to get to the $1,000 level. Now, on this program, the $1,000 level for you in this metaphor means that you will leave with something if you get this. At least get this. This is the $1,000 level. You must send blame out of your life for any conditions of your life. Blame has to go. All right? Now, blame means if you're sitting there with a disease, you say without guilt, it's mine, I take responsibility for it. This means that if you have been through any tough circumstances in your life, this means if you have a minimal amount of financial security in your life, this means if your children don't get along with you, this means that if your neighbors are taking up a petition to get you out of the neighborhood, whatever it might be that's going on in your life, you name it, and everybody across this great country and across this world has a series of these things that you're willing to say, I am here because of the choices that I have made right now. I'm willing to say that. Even though it's difficult, and we know it's really not your fault. We know really there's a lot of people out there who are really bad, all right? But you're willing to say no blame. That's the first level, all right? That's where you understand no justified resentment. And then on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show, there is what is called the $32,000 level. And the $32,000 level is not only an opportunity for you to walk away with a sizable amount of goodies, which you can walk away from tonight in this program, but it also is the door opener to multi-wealth. But you got to get to this in order to have an opportunity to move into these transcendent levels, all right? Millionaire spiritual status, all right? You got to get through these next 5 questions. And this $32,000 question, level rather, comes to this. It came to me from a quotation that I used in the writing of A Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. I read a book that was written a couple of thousand years ago by Patanjali, the Yoga Sutras, the aphorisms of Patanjali. And one of those sutras, one of those aphorisms, observations that this brilliant man made almost 2,000 years ago, was this. He said, if you become steadfast in your abstentions of thoughts of harm directed towards others, all living creatures will cease to feel enmity in your presence. Now this translates to blame, pretty basic, no more blame. I'm just not going to assign responsibility to other people for where I am, because now I have an opportunity to get rid of it. If I think someone else caused it, then I've got to wait for somebody else to change in order for me to get rid of it, and you might wait forever for that. But if I take responsibility for it, I can do something, including move on, which might be the most important thing to do. All right? But at the higher level, when there are no justified resentments, what you are doing is what St. Francis did, Francesco. What you are doing is you are at a place where you are sending love in response to hate. You are literally saying, no matter what comes my way, I am going to be steadfast in my abstention of thoughts of harm directed toward others. I'm going to work hard at, no matter what comes my way, having it come out of me what I want to come out of me, and that is love, and that is a higher energy. And if you can get to that level, Patanjali said, all living creatures will cease to feel enmity in your presence. I have a little girl, a precious little girl. I have 6 precious girls and 2 precious sons, but I have a little girl who is almost 12. And she loves animals like no one I've ever met in my life. I mean, her whole life revolves around animals. And when we walk in the woods, butterflies avoid me fly away from people around, and they come and they land right on her arm, and it happens all the time. All living creatures, she couldn't have a thought of harm directed towards any living creature, and Patanjali said to us, all living creatures will cease to feel fear or enmity or anger in the presence of those who can send love in response to hate. That's what I mean when I say there are no justified resentments. I'm going to be speaking today about sort of the foundation for what I'm going to be speaking about tomorrow as well. For the last several months, I have been over at my home on Maui, working on a book that is the culmination of a lifetime of writing. It's my 24th book, and it could well be the last book I write in these areas. It's called The Power of Intention, and it's about the whole idea of when we have an unbending kind of intent in our hearts about something that we want to create and attract into our lives, that it absolutely is impossible for it not to work when we identify ourselves with the whole field of intention from which all of us originated. And it is essentially a very spiritual message. And I will be sharing more about that tomorrow afternoon, exactly what intention is and how we can attract virtually anything we want into our lives. I learned something when I was very, very young. I was the richest kid in the orphanage. I was the only kid that ever had money all the time. And today I'm 62 years old, and I still have never made a house payment, nor have I ever made a car payment. And I have purchased 19 homes for various people in my family, including everyone in my family and my wife's family and people who work for me, and my children and my wife's children from her previous marriage, and so on. It has been, and it isn't because I'm special, it isn't because I'm more talented, more educated, more brilliant than anybody else. It's because of something that I have always known in my heart, and that is that something that Earl Nightingale, a man who was a great friend of mine and a dear friend, passed away a few years back, put out a tape back in the 40s called The Strangest Secret. And the strangest secret is nothing more than these words: we become what we think about all day long. And it sounds almost too simple to be such a great and powerful secret. But the fact is that our thoughts are the things that we use to create our reality. Tomorrow afternoon, I will be speaking about the energy field from which all of us emanate. None of us came here because of our parents' blissful activity in the moment of our conception. We think that that's where we came from, but it's just an illusion, it's just a myth. We come from that place. My teacher in India a few years back was asked a question by one of his devotees: where does everything come from? And his response was, where does your question come from? It is from the same no place, the same place that has no boundaries and no form. And it is that spiritual element that all things emanate from. We become what we think about all day long. I've just published a book not very long ago called There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. And the essence of that book is that when you bring higher and faster energy, which is how energy shows up in the universe, it's either high or low, or fast or slow. And higher and faster energy is the energy that nullifies and dissolves lower and slower energy. And even more than nullifying and dissolving it, it converts it into something called love and peace and kindness and receptivity and creativity. So that if you are living in a place in your life in which you have shortages or which you have disease or which you have disharmony or struggles at all, and anything that you label a problem, if you can somehow learn how to do a somersault into the inconceivable and land in a place where you're looking at a new level of consciousness in which problems are not a possibility for you, and that you can attract anything that you want into your life, that there is a source in the universe. Or you can have a different vision. And the vision you can have is of you to be able to attract and create anything that you want, the power of the mind. One of the great lessons to learn from these kinds of experiences that you'll be having here. So, what I'm suggesting is that there is a place within each and every one of us from which all of us can go, to where all of us can go. There was a man that I admired very much. His name was Herman Melville. Melville was a great American writer back in the 19th century. He wrote Moby Dick. And many other great pieces of literature and much poetry. And he would leave his writing space in western Massachusetts, and he would go out into the cornfields, and he would lie down on his back, and he would see in August, he would see the corn, as they say in South Pacific, as high as an elephant's eye. I think, not South Pacific, whatever that is, Oklahoma, I guess it is. And he would imagine that this sea of corn, silk, that's all that he could see lying on his back, was the ocean. And, you know, I used to teach Moby Dick when I taught English literature. And a lot of people think that he was just an obsessive old man looking for a whale. But what Moby Dick was really about was the pursuit of that which everyone else considers to be impossible, and the obsessive determination to not allow oneself to be defeated by any forces in the universe. It's a very powerful theme in Melville's life. And as he would lie there on his back, he would look up, and this is what he wrote in Moby Dick. For as this appalling ocean surrounds the verdant land, so in the soul of man there lies one insular Tahiti, full of peace and joy, but encompassed by all of the horrors of the half-lived life. You got to go to Tahiti. You got to go to that inner Tahiti, that place of peace and joy. And, as I'll be talking about tomorrow, make conscious contact with that source from which you emanated. Because most of us, when we come from that source, most of us, we show up into this world, and in this world, we take on something called an ego. And when we take on this ego, it's really nothing more than just an idea that we carry around about who we are. And we begin to believe in this idea about who we are. And this idea about who we are is something that we run our lives on. And it's really based upon the notion that who I am is what I have, and who I am is what I do, and who I am is what others think of me, my reputation, and who I am is separate from everyone else, and who I am is separate from what I would like to attract into my life, that is, from what's missing in my life. Somehow I'm separate from that. That's 5. And 6, who I am is separate from God, from my source. And those 6 ideas that we carry around inside of us are the things that destroy our abilities to become manifestors, attractors of anything that we want to place our attention on.
But on June the 26th of last year, I made an announcement to my family. I told them that I had written 41 books. Many of them I have been blessed to have appear on bestseller lists all around the world. And that I was not going to do that anymore. I had completed that part of my life, and I had some other things that I wanted to do, and I wanted to just sort of take it easy now. I'm 72 years old, and I don't want to have that pressure to face those empty pages over and over and over again, as I've been doing since I was in my 30s. That was June the 26th. On June the 27th, I woke up and I began writing. And I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote for the next 5 months. And I couldn't stop, because there is something inside of me that is a calling. There is something moving the pieces around that is bigger than who I am and what this ego of mine says. And it's getting in touch with that inner drive, that part of us that says, this is what you're here for. This is what you came into this world to be. I was being interviewed by the New York Times about a decade or so ago, and there was also a gentleman there who's a very famous writer. His name was Arthur Miller, perhaps the most famous American playwright of the 20th century. You've all read Death of a Salesman and The Crucible and so many others. And Arthur Miller was 91 years old at the time, and he was asked the question, are you working on another play? And I'll never forget his answer, because it inspired me in many ways. He said, I don't know, but I probably am. But I probably am. That there is something that calls all of us here. And I just want to speak a little bit about that in the time that I have here this morning. There was, I have said that if there is, I wrote these words out last night. If there is intelligence behind life, and there is every reason to believe that there is, or that there may be, and think about that for a moment. If there's intelligence behind life, and all of science points to the fact that there is some kind of an intelligence behind life, behind this body that you were hearing about in the last hour, that there's something mystical, if you will. And I brought with me just a quote from the man who won the Nobel Prize for Physics. He was Einstein's greatest teacher. He was considered the father of modern quantum physics. His name was Max Planck. And on receiving the Nobel Prize for Physics, this is what he said. He said, as a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you, as the result of all of my research about atoms, this much, that there is no matter as such. That all matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this minute solar system of the atom together. We must, as scientists, all assume that behind this force is the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. This divine intelligence that is behind everything that is working in this body that we are so consumed with and so concerned about, and how to keep it healthy, that there is something beyond that. One of my favorite poets once observed, he said, what if you slept? And what if in your sleep you dreamed? And what if in your dream you went to heaven and there picked a strange and wonderful flower? And what if when you awoke, you held that flower in your hand? Ah, what then? Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who wrote The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and I wonder when I ask that question, I've done it on a couple of my public television specials, to ask that question, do you really believe that such a thing is possible? Because as I wrote out last night, I said, if there is intelligence behind life, and there is every reason to believe that there is, then all of that intelligence must be innate in each creation of that intelligence. This universal mind, or this, whatever you want to call it, divine mind, the great Tao. I wrote a book 8 years ago called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, which was based on the ancient teachings of the Tao Te Ching by a man named Lao Tzu, who wrote it 2,500 years ago, 500 years before the birth of Christ. And in that great tome, some call it the wisest book ever written. There's 81 verses, and I decided to write an essay on each of those 81 verses and how to apply it in today's life. He said, the great Tao, God, soul, this matrix behind all of life, he said, it does nothing, and yet it leaves nothing undone. He said, each and every one of you are doing nothing. You're all just being done. There is something moving the checkers around in this checkerboard that we call our life, that Arthur Miller was referring to when he said, I don't know, but I probably am. And that I said, when I said to my children, I'm through writing books, not only have I written an entirely new book, which was 144,000 words that I couldn't stop writing. I wrote it all by hand, every word of it. It's why I'm sitting on this chair, because my neck went crazy, sitting there hour after hour writing about all the significant quantum moments that have appeared in my life that turned the direction of my life from where it was headed into a right turn and sometimes into an about face. And I call this book, I Can See Clearly Now. I can see clearly that the things that were taking place when I really thought that I knew what I was doing, and something else was in charge of the whole process. One of the famous observations of one of our great humorists, Mark Twain, he said, the thing that gets you into trouble isn't what you don't know. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And there's so much of what we know for sure that just ain't so. Just like what I knew for sure that I wasn't going to be writing. Not only have I written another entire book and looked at all of these significant factors and features that were really at play, moving me about, but I've written another book on top of that I'm about 3/4 of the way through, based upon how to apply the Bhagavad Gita, the great song of the Lord that Gandhi based his life on, and how we can apply it each and every day of our life. So there's a wonderful poem I want to share with you that reflects what Mark Twain was saying, that it's what you know for sure that just ain't so. It's called The Cookie Thief. It was written by Valerie Cox. A woman was waiting at an airport one night with several long hours before her flight. She hunted for a book in the airport shops and bought a bag of cookies and found a place to drop. She was engrossed in her book, but happened to see that the man beside her, as bold as could be, grabbed a cookie or two from the bag between, which she tried to ignore to avoid a scene. So she munched the cookies and watched the clock as this gutsy cookie thief diminished her stock. She was getting more irritated as the minutes ticked by, thinking, if I wasn't so nice, I'd blacken his eye. With each cookie she took, he took one too. And when only one was left, she wondered what he'd do. And with a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half. He offered her half as he ate the other. And she snatched it from him and thought, oh, brother, this guy has some nerve, and he's also rude. Why, he didn't even show any gratitude. She had never known when she had been so galled, and she sighed with relief when her flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed to the gate, refusing to look back at the thieving ingrate. She boarded the plane, she sank in her seat, then she sought her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she gasped with surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. If mine are here, she moaned with despair, then the others were his, and he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief. Isn't that beautiful? Valerie Cox.